Hello, my name is Tara Coyote. I have been an author. I published my book, Grace, Grit, and Gratitude, which is right here in August 2021, which is just 2 months ago now. So I'm a new author. I do work as an equine facilitated learning instructor, which basically means I work with people in a therapeutic manner with horses. So yeah, I also do some other things too. I've been in the public eye with a cancer journey, so I'm a bit of an influencer, so I work in that aspect as well on social media. Well, in sharing my experience, I will share some of my story that is in my book. So I wrote a memoir basically about journeying with late stage cancer and also how horses have been a powerful healing force for me. So I started writing a lot about 6 years ago when my best friend died from leukemia. And I was a way to really put my grief out into the world, to release it, to transform it through the process of writing. And I ended up sharing it on social media. I was blogging. And then I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer about a year after she died. And I ended up sharing my health journey publicly as well, and was blogging and sharing social media. And after years and years and years and years of writing, I would hear from people, Tara, you should write a book. All this writing is so amazing. And it was around the time the pandemic hit in March 2020, and I was planning to make a documentary showing late stage cancer thrivers who are defeating the odds. And I had all these plans going to place to create this documentary. And then the pandemic hit, and I live on Kauai, a very small island in the middle of the ocean. And of course, as you know, travel completely halted everywhere around the world. So it was virtually impossible to do a documentary like I was planning to do. And so being on this tiny island, I decided, okay, I have all this writing. So I decided to put all this writing into this book because, you know, we were in quarantine and there wasn't a lot going on. So it was a perfect time to really write a book. So what I did, I spent about 15 months every single day. It took a lot of discipline, pouring my energy into this book, which meant like a huge amount of editing and consolidating and rewriting. And that's how my lovely book was born. So when I wrote my memoir, it took a lot of courage and vulnerability to put my story out. In my book, there's stories in there that I shared that only the closest people next to me knew. So it took a lot of courage actually to say like, oh my gosh, I'm putting out my story to thousands or more people. Anybody can have access to these secrets in my life. So, you know, from the perspective of writing your own story, your memoir, it does take a lot of courage to do that. But I need to say, ultimately, it's a very healing experience because I feel like what we go through, our challenges, they're tools where other people can learn from us. So if I share in a vulnerable matter, what was really hard for me, and I share how I found my way through it, it could inspire somebody else who's going through a similar challenge and to know that they're not so alone. So I really encourage you, if you want to share your story, to do so, because you never know when that'll ripple out and help other people who are going through something similar. Especially these days where we're much more isolated and separate, like it's really important to find that common theme of connection for us all, basically, to feel healthy and balanced. Well, I had to be extremely organized to get my book done, especially near the end, because it took hours and hours and hours each day of focusing and finishing editing and all that. So what I did, I had a planner where I would write down each day, okay, I'm going to spend an hour. My goal was to do an hour a day, once a day, for those 15 months. But sometimes if I had more time, it would be 2 hours, 3 hours. So my day looked like, okay, trying to fit in, where can I have an hour that's uninterrupted? And so I would say, okay, I have time early in the morning or later in the day. And what I would do is that I would turn my phone on airplane mode, which was very important, so I wasn't distracted. And I did a little ritual where I would light a candle and say, this is my sacred writing time and nothing will disturb it. I made sure no messages came through, and I just sat down and I wrote, I edited whatever needed to be done. And what really helped me, because I think to write a book or be a writer, you need to have a lot of discipline, because you're not at like a 9-to-5 job where you're there and someone is watching over you. You have to really be self-motivated. So what helped me was to write down what I wanted to accomplish that day, whether it was research or editing or writing a piece. And then once I was done with that hour, however long, I would write down what I accomplished and what I hope to do the next day. So having that organization was very, very important for me. And you're probably hearing the roosters. I live in Kauai and they're loose everywhere, so I can't shut them up. I live in the jungle. I do not have the formal education to be a writer, to be honest. I know friends of mine who are writers who got master's degree in English literature, whatever it may be. When I went to school, I always loved writing. I loved writing as a young girl. I always wrote stories. When I was 19, I wanted to be a writer, but then I became a young mom at the age of 21, and that threw me off because I was a young single mom. But I mean, I loved English and I loved writing, but I had no formal education. And I have a bachelor's of arts and humanities, and it's a very general degree. So, you know, it's honestly my love of writing that helped me write a book, because I've always read. I read a lot, so I have all that, you know, just words going through my mind, and I love writing. I love writing stories. I love writing poetry. So you do not need to have a formal education to be a writer. It maybe helps to have a, you know, a job at a certain, you know, area of discipline, but yeah, for me, I don't. So. Is definitely solitary. That's one thing. It's like I spend a lot of time by myself. I'm very comfortable with my own presence, but it can be a bit isolating. So for me, I feel like it's important to balance things out with socialization. I do belong in writing groups online, and sometimes I get involved with writing conferences on Zoom, and that's very helpful, and through Facebook and other places to connect with other writers. But it is very isolating. It's not like going to be social with a lot of people, which has its benefits if you like being by yourself, but then it can also be a little, yeah, isolating at times. Yes, I did run a horse retreat center in Northern California for many years, where people would come and do activities, do therapy with me and workshops. And through that experience, I learned how to market my business. So I learned how to be prominent on social media. I learned how to do advertisements. I learned how to write posts in a certain way to get people's attention. And I think a lot of that foundation has played into my success as an author. My book is doing really well because I did build a prominent social media following, which does help these days because social media is so prominent. So I do believe that experience helped. So when it came time for my book to be published, I already had a good following of people who are interested and actually bought my book. So I would say that experience. And then also too, just to add in a bit about social media, I feel like it sounds funny, but probably other writers would agree. A lot of the posts or a lot of the writing in my book is from social media, where I would write posts every day. It was a bit of my meditation practice to just write something each day. And a lot of what's in this book has been taken from social media posts and kind of transformed in a certain way. So yeah, I think that's a good reason to have social media. Finish writing a book, I would say you need to have a lot of self-discipline, a lot of fortitude to get things done, follow through, because so many of us have ideas of, I want to write a book, but it's hard work to write a book. I mean, honestly, when I started out writing, if I knew how much hard work it would take with everything, I don't know if I would have finished it. I mean, I'm so glad I did, and it's been powerful, but to have the ability to be self-disciplined and say, okay, I'm going to write this much today, or I'm going to edit this, and to do it, to be able to have the self-discipline and the tools to get it done, basically. That's probably the most important thing. And to have boundaries too, because there was times when, you know, maybe I wanted to go to the beach or hang out with friends, and it was like, no, I need to write, because I knew if I put my writing aside for the day, it probably would have been that day and then another day, and then it would take me a week back in to get into the flow of things. So for me, what really helped is to have that consistent practice, because if you lose it for a day or two, there's a good chance you're going to lose it for more days than that, and it's harder to get back into the practice. Well, for me, I mean, some people like to write on pen and paper. I have my laptop. It's a very basic laptop, but it works well, Apple computer. I also write a lot on my phone. Like I said, I do posts. So yeah, you don't really need much. I mean, there's apps that are great as well, but yeah, whatever works for you, a computer, pen and paper. It's pretty simple. I mean, I guess a printer is good if you want to print something out. You don't need a lot. I did not travel at all. Like I said, when I wrote my book, it was during the pandemic, and travel was very restricted. Actually, we were pretty locked down here in Kauai for a year. So, but that said, a lot of people will do book tours, which hasn't really kicked back into gear post pandemic as the time we are recording this now. The beautiful thing about that pandemic is that a lot of stuff is online now. So you could actually do like a book promo online. I do love traveling. And since I've written my book, I've had lots of invitations to write articles for publications, which is great. It's super exciting. And so I think if somebody would enjoy traveling, that could be possible. You know, it definitely could be worked into it. With my life as it is now, I'm not traveling, but I think, yeah, why not? When the world gets a little bit more normal, probably. So I self-published my book, and the reason why I did that is I did a little bit of research when I was writing it, and I realized, like you said, the publishing world is changing. What I had heard is that unless you are a celebrity and have a huge following, it's really hard to go through a publishing house. So I ended up signing up for an online school to learn how to self-publish, which was super duper helpful to do. So I basically learned the tools for how to publish, because for me, it's like I needed to learn, like for me to have a little bit of structure, that was helpful. And there's a lot of courses out there now, which is very, very helpful. I did self-publishing school if anybody's interested. So the benefits for self-publishing, from what I know, I've never published traditionally, so I'm just sharing what I've heard, is that you can actually make more money if you self-publish. You do have everything on you though, like you have to design the cover, you need to figure out the formatting, you know, editor, all these things that a publisher handles. But that gives you a lot more freedom, because I can say, I like this cover or I don't like this cover. Whereas if you go through a publisher, I hear that it's more about what they choose. So the benefit of going through a publisher is that they handle all the nitty-gritty details. I know for me with self-publishing, I ended up spending more money than I intended to on getting my book to be the perfect specimen that I wanted it to be. But my book is rather long and there's more intricate formatting involved with my book. So I'm glad I went the self-publishing route. It's been a lot of work, but my book's doing really well. In 2 months, I've sold 480 copies, which I think is pretty good for most beginning authors. So yeah, I guess like if I did have a publicity background and I did go through the publisher, it would have been a lot less work on my end, but I wouldn't have had the same freedom in doing the book as I had. And this is probably going to another question, but I'm working on a second book right now. I want to do a children's book about Mustangs because my book's about horses and sharing the plight of the Mustang. So I'm really excited now that I know how to self-publish, because now that I know how to do it, I can like write other books, and I've already gone through the process. So it'll be much easier. So I think overall, for me, self-publishing has been wonderful to really create the path that I want with my book, basically. That's my experience. Okay. Well, generally what people say is you're not going to make a lot of money being an author. That said, I do know people who are authors who have a lot of books who are making money, but most authors do have side jobs like I do and many others do. It takes a while to build up the momentum. Like for me, my book's published and it takes 90 days from Amazon to get your first check. So I'm about to get my first check, which is super duper exciting. And I have other offers for articles to be written that I'm being paid for, and this and that that's come as a result of my book. But yeah, I would not say you're going to make a lot of money, just to be honest. It's a lot of labor of love, but you never know. Like you could write a book and it can do really, really well, and it could lead to other opportunities. A lot of people write books and it'll be little bit of like a business card. You know, it gives you credibility if you're a coach or if you are marketing in some way. What I'm doing right now is like I'm taking time to learn about Amazon ads and how to really market my book. It's had a lot of momentum and it's been doing well, but I want it to continue doing well. So I'm investing into learning about the marketing aspect of things. So yeah, I would say being a writer is not going to make you rich, but if you love writing, then, and it fills your heart, that's a great thing. And to follow your heart and that passion. And I really believe that if we follow our hearts, that'll lead us to the next thing, you know, whether it's like a best-selling book or another opportunity that'll bring you exactly where you need to go. There is this funny thing. If you say you're writing a book, people are like, yeah, right, whatever, you're writing a book. You're not really writing a book. Like you're just saying you're writing a book. Like, you know, just a lot of people say, oh, I'm working on a book, but it's never actually published. So it's not that that was put on me, but there was maybe a little bit of doubt of like, okay, yeah, that's what you're doing. Let's see if you actually really publish it or not. And so maybe now that I actually have a published book that's doing well, people believe me more. So I think a lot of stigma around writers is, you know, the moody artist, which, you know, yeah, I could say that's true. I can be moody at times. But I live in a pretty open-minded world, and that's not really affected me so much. And again, I wrote my book during the pandemic where you didn't really have a lot of social contact. So yeah, so I'm the crazy animal woman. I hang out with my animals, so they certainly don't judge me. My favorite part about being an author is that I can create my own world. You know, I wrote this book out of my experience with a great, crazy health experience, and you know, so many friends dying, and my experience with cancer and being with horses. And so I created this whole story around my experience. And that's a very creative, beautiful. Yeah, I really love the freedom that comes with writing. I love that there's magazines and other publications reaching out to me saying, Tara, can you write an article? And maybe it could be something about healing with horses, but there's a very broad question there where I can take whatever I want to write and pour my creativity into that. I love the fact that I've decided, okay, I'm going to write a children's book about Mustangs, wild horses, because I have this, you know, passion for advocating for wild horses, and I can do that. You know, if I wanted to write a story about Hawaii, because I live in Hawaii, I could do that. So there's a lot of freedom in it. You know, if I wanted to write a romance novel, I could do that. It's a beautiful thing to be able to channel your creativity in that way. And I also love too that I could be in my world with my lovely animals here. Like I said, it takes a lot of self-discipline, but if you can really organize your time, you can create a world and a life that works for you in a beautiful manner. So there's a lot of freedom in it, which I really appreciate. I've never been one to like a 9-to-5 job. Hardest parts about being a writer has been, like I mentioned, the discipline it took. Like months and months ago when I was so close to publishing my book, and I was at the end stages, and I remember it was just like going through the gauntlet of like, oh my gosh, I'm almost done, but there was yet one more edit. It was like, oh my gosh, how many times am I going to read this book? I got so tired of looking through and continually finding mistakes. So, and also too, in that end with the self-publishing, I picked a formatter who was fairly new at doing the job. So she unfortunately made a lot of mistakes, which made it very frustrating for me, because I won't go on to the crazy tragic details, but it was very challenging to be navigating this new way of being and how to publish a book and all the technology, and run into mistake after mistake after mistake. So that was really, really challenging. And again, it just took a lot of discipline to say, okay, I will get through this hurdle. I will finish these edits. So yeah, which by the time you're on the other side, it's done. There's that sense of accomplishment that comes with it. But it can be a bit like climbing a mountain at times. Like I can see it, but I'm not quite there, and I need to keep going. I'll say I wish I knew how much time it would take, because I might not have finished. But one thing I wish I had done was trusting my gut, because with self-publishing, you know, you need to hire an editor, you need to hire a cover designer and a formatter. I mean, there's copy editors, there's so many different people you can hire. And at one point, there was a few formatters who were recommended to me that came highly recommended. There was a lot of kudos, and a lot of people had great experiences with them. But for me, I guess I had wanted my book to be done sooner. And I guess I'm coming around about to this question. I wish I had known how much time it would have taken, and to give myself more breathing room. Because for me, I was like, I need to have it done in a month or whatever it is. But I wish I had known that most likely that month would take 3 months. And that would have given me some breathing room to go with that person that was recommended to me, rather than somebody else who wasn't as experienced, that cost me a lot of mistakes down the line and more money and more frustration. So Yeah, I guess what I would say is to give yourself more time and to know that what you think might be done in a month might actually be 3 months. And that's okay. For you to have a successful book, that's maybe what it takes. So to give yourself some breathing room, and also to celebrate your accomplishments too. One of my writing teacher talks about, we always have a goal of like, oh, I want to publish this book or do this, but we don't take time to celebrate our accomplishments of like, oh my gosh, I published a book. Let's go celebrate. To give yourself some accolades for that, and to really take time to be present with that rather than, okay, what do I have to do next? And I'm reminding myself that as I'm saying that to you, because I need to do a little better with that one. Near the end of publishing my book, everything pretty much went into my book because I was so determined to get it done by the summer. So I was pretty much living and breathing and sleeping, writing my book. I would wake up at 5 a.m. before my phone would ring and put attention into editing or whatever it was. So yes, I was, and at times it was a little bit challenging too. So I also too, just to keep in mind, I live on property here in Hawaii, and that takes a lot of time and energy, as do my horses. So I already have a lot of responsibilities already, but yeah, maintaining a balance is important if you can do it. And sometimes it gets a little bit sacrificed for your projects, but that's not forever. It's just temporary. Say, just start writing. There's publications that are all the time looking for new articles. So I would say write something, send it to a magazine, and see if you enjoy the process. I mean, that's one part of it, is writing for magazines, but start there, see if you enjoy the process of writing and editing and what that takes, that whole process. And then, you can take that writing and expound upon it, write a story, write a memoir, or whatever it may be. My book is very large. It's 501 pages, but it doesn't have to be that long. You can just start saying, okay, I'm going to write 30,000 words or 50,000 words and just see where it goes. Just experiment. And, it's pretty incredible if you choose to self-publish, how easy it is. I mean, even though I said there was challenges, it can be done. And to just try doing it, why not? What do you have to lose if you're intrigued about it? And like I said, you never know what that experience will lead to, and might lead to a full-time career. You never know. I do. I would say listen to your heart and what you want to do. I think it's very hard for young people these days because there's so much stimulus and, adults and teachers saying you should do this, you should do that. But I think it's really important to follow what makes your heart happy, whatever that may be. And for me, when I got out of school, when I was 18, 19, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Actually, I did want to be a writer, but like I said, life had other plans for me, but it came back around to it many years later, which is fun. But just to really trust your heart. And, of course, it takes fortitude to be in the world and survive and all that, but to really listen to your heart, and if you can, make that a priority, especially over what other people might want you to do, because you're the only one who can make yourself happy with whatever you're doing. So, and also too, from my experience, like I share in my book about facing death, like life is short. You just said this a little while ago. It's important to do what brings you joy, and you're the only one who can dictate that for yourself.